We are recording. Good morning, everyone.
Great.
Okay. I guess we should go ahead and get started. I'm Richard Rogers. I'll be sitting in for Amy for the first part of this. She's actually having to deal with the vaccine stuff, so you know how critical that is. So, but she is definitely going to try to join us in the second half of this meeting. Again, I'm Richard Rogers. I'm the Deputy State CIO. And before I hand this over to others, I know that she wanted to make sure that we talked about some of the changes that's occurring here in 2021. I guess there was a work here about California State Library, excuse me, that we want to thank Anne, I guess, for her services that she's had for this board. And then we want to welcome the new designee, Laura Sasaki. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Are you on, Lori?
Yes, I am. You got it right.
Cool. And member Greg Lucas is joining us also today. Is Craig on? Yes. All right. And then for California Department of Food and Ag, we want to thank Arturo. Is that the right pronunciation?
No, it's Rachel O'Brien. I'm the Deputy Secretary over here. Nice to see everybody.
Oh, okay. And welcome Rachel O'Brien as the new designee. And then last but not least, I know Marcy Caboni introduced herself earlier, but I understand that she's going to be in as a designee for Secretary Kim. Is that correct?
Correct, that's correct. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to hand a roll call over to Jules.
Good morning, Rogers. Richard, that's you.
Here.
Mr. Osborne.
Present.
Mr. Mallon.
Pat Mellon's present.
Mr. Below. If Jeff isn't here, is somebody here for him? Mr. Jameson.
Present.
Ms. Caboti.
Present.
Ms. McPeak.
Here.
Ms. O'Brien.
Present.
Mr. Lucas.
Here.
Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Dr. Williams.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. So at this point, should I be handing it over to the acting chair? Should I continue?
Go ahead, Richard, and turn it over to Rob. And Rob can lead from here. Thank you so much
Okay.
for starting our meeting. Rob?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I'm Rob Osborne, Director of the Communications Division at the California Public Utilities Commission. I'm filling in for CPC Commissioner Martha Guzman Aceves, and I've been asked by Council Chair Amy Tong to run the meeting today. Since the last council meeting, we've seen the passage in Congress of $7 billion in stimulus funding to help close the digital divide. And of that, $3.2 billion is set aside for broadband for low-income households, the emergency broadband benefit. A number of California stakeholders, including the PUC, have filed comments with the FCC on this program, and the FCC is expected to publish the rules by next Thursday, the 25th. The $7 billion also includes $1 billion for tribal broadband, which will be administered by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. The CPC plans to hold 3 back-to-back virtual roundtables with tribes beginning on March 2nd, hosted by CPC Tribal Advisor Ken Holbrook. And details on how to participate in those roundtables will be found on the PUC's website under the stimulus funding page. On top of the $7 billion approved by Congress in December, Congress is also considering an additional bill, the American Rescue Plan, that would help students and families connect to the internet. Today's agenda is pretty full, but we've reserved 30 minutes for public comment in the agenda. So if you'd like to speak, we'll be taking names and calling on speakers during that time. The first item on the agenda will be a dedication of the Council's Broadband Action Plan to the late Honorable Gwen Moore, who created the state's Universal Service Act, which brought affordable telephone access to all Californians. Following the dedication, the Department of Technology's Deputy Director Stephanie Tom will provide an update on the Council's action plan details. After that, we'll hear from the Department of Technology about a new rural connectivity bid solicitation. And then we'll have an update from the Department of Aging. And then following that, we'll have 30 minutes at the end for public comment. So as a reminder, please remember to put your microphone on mute unless you're speaking. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Angela Williams and Neville Bonilla.
This is Richard. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I forgot to make one last announcement or change. So I'd like to do that first before we go forward. Stephanie Tong has a new position and will be no longer on the board. We want to definitely thank her for all her hard work that she's done to get us to this point. And, you know, Amy and I definitely want to thank Stephanie for all that she's done. While we're trying to find someone to be in her place, Ellen Ishimoto, Adelina Zendejas, and myself it'll take three of us to kind of help fill in that gap for her. But I definitely wanted to announce that before we got any further. So again, thank you, Stephanie, for your hard work.
Mr. Chair, could I just comment? I also want to thank Stephanie for obviously pursuing and keeping the commitment to see the action plan get submitted. And I just want to underscore that once you're a digital champion, you can take a new job, you can try to retire, you can go wherever you want to, but you never get to leave the family. So that is just part of the covenant of digital work. So I thought we should make it clear to her that we know where she is and where we can get a hold of her.
Thank you, Sunny. I appreciate that. And since we're on the topic, if the council, of course, and the attendees don't mind, I just want to take a few seconds to thank you so much for this honor. It has been an absolute honor to be able to serve you in this capacity and serve the administration as the Deputy for Broadband and Digital Literacy. I absolutely have loved every minute of it. I completely appreciate, of course, the camaraderie and the support that each and every one of you on the council, of course, all of the details that we've been following up with you on for the executive order and the action plan, and of course, bringing the council to where it is today. And then of course, all of the stakeholders. I see Tom West, there's so many people that I can see who have been instrumental, Laura Sasaki, all the regional consortia who stepped up. And frankly, the response time is hours. And I am forever grateful for that. I know when Sunny says you're a part of the family, it's forever. I cannot help but gravitate toward broadband. I'm always going to be thinking of digital literacy. I'm always going to be thinking about the underserved. And I just wanted to thank you so much. It's been an honor. And I do hope to work with each and every one of you in a new capacity. And we'll stay in touch. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so and we'll hand it over to Dr. Angela Williams and then Neville Bonilla.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Angela, did you want to go first?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I was basically going to say, and take it away.
So thank you, everyone. Angelo and I come at this from two different angles, and we're going to share that. But first, we would like to thank the members of Assemblywoman Moore's staff who have joined us today. We have Joy Atkinson, Gregory Cook, Bill Julian, Carolyn Veal Hunter, and Yvonne Wilson. And we we know that the alumni of her office all stay in touch, and we are honored that you all would take time out of your day to join us this morning for this formal dedication. Everyone here has probably read the dedication. I'd like to just read it again. This is similar to what we had all talked about at the last meeting when we raised this as an item. So the Broadband for All Action Plan is dedicated to the memory of the late Honorable Gwen Moore. She was the 4th African-American woman elected to the California legislature in 1978. Assemblywoman Moore led transformative changes to California's telecommunication policies during her 16-year career in the legislature, 12 of which were as chair of the Powerful Utilities and Commerce Committee. Assemblywoman Moore not only crafted the state's Universal Service Act, bringing affordable telephone access to all Californians, she also imagined a California in which residents could all benefit from access to the internet, even proposing a statewide ISDN network in 1993. In a state that has led the world's technology innovations, the California Broadband Council remains grateful to a leader who believed and left a legacy of work to ensure all Californians should have equal and equitable access to these innovations and opportunities. And I'd like to mention that how this dedication came to be was really a part of the writing process of the Broadband Action Plan. You will see some citations to the Assemblywoman's legislation in the action plan. We could have added so many more. There was a time at which I was writing a short sort of primer on telecom history in California, and you go through it and you just start seeing it is not just obviously the More Universal Service Act, though there is even someone who has written his PhD dissertation was focused completely on that. And as Sarah pointed out during the last meeting, it was a model for what happened nationally. But she did incredible work on privacy. She brought together industry and advocates. And, for all of us who have been working on broadband and have been talking about how important it is from an equity perspective, and suddenly during the pandemic, everyone else has realized that, which I think we all think is wonderful and amazing to finally see that. She saw it then. She recognized that then, how important it was for California and for everyone in this state. It is, and it's actually a member of her staff, Bill Julian, who's on today, who was the first person who told me about, to understand how much the Assemblywoman did in this area. And so I think we are so fortunate to have someone like her who has led us, and she passed away this summer, as all of you know. And I hope that this dedication does some justice to her wonderful memory. And with that, I would like to pass it over to Dr. Williams.
Thanks, Ann. I think it's apropos that the report is dedicated to Assembly Member Moore in the connective expanse between African American History Month and Women's History Month, mainly because she was a visionary, and her visionary intent related to Lifeline services and other telecom related services, and also just in general as it relates to justice and equity, were well before the common conversation around these items. And so as we look at, even in this year, legislation, I think it's so deeply important to look at and remind ourselves of her visionary intent. And a lot of that visionary intent had to do with justice and equity. And those really should be the guiding principles that we constantly think about when it comes to broadband issues and closing the digital divide. I also want to thank the broadband staff for reaching out to former staff members, especially Carolynville Hunter, who has been a mentor to me and so many others. I had the opportunity as an 18-year-old, as a YMCA youth in government representative, to intern in her office inside of the program. So if you know youth in government, which in fact is still running today, they bring young, super wet behind the ears, young folk who just have a passion for public service. And I was benefited by just the simple association of being, again, a Crenshaw High School student who Assemblywoman Gwen Moore gave an opportunity to. And throughout the years, I have come in contact with many of her staffers, but also with many of her legislative ideas. When Assemblymember Gibson authored AB 1196, which banned the chokehold statewide, it actually was Gwen Moore 40 years prior who had authored a bill, of course, that, and you think about it, during those times did not see the light of day. Of course, she did this at great expense because this was obviously in the years before and after the civil unrest in Los Angeles, the beating of Rodney King, and other incidents that were a powder keg in the community. And her courage in charting that path for us is so important. It was so important. It is so important to Mr. Gibson as an inspiration. It was really the times that have changed. And what I mean by that is our reaction to these kinds of issues related to justice. The Assemblywoman was and continues to be such a touchstone for anyone who's thinking of the future of California, because so many years ago, when few people were talking about these issues, she was the one, along with her colleagues, that laid down a marker for the rest of us to be attendant to. And so in many ways, she continues to be a North Star for us. And I think that it is so apropos that she is the North Star for our considerations around broadband and closing the digital divide.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment?
Yes, certainly.
Well, first of all, it was really inspirational when Ann and Dr. Williams suggested the dedication, and Sarah also joined in, and I was quite enthusiastic about it. I do want to note that it is not polite for Dr. Williams to brag about being so young. So, he should be respecting some of his elders, and my relationship with Gwen goes back to, she and I were both elected in the same year. She to the legislature, I was elected to a county supervisor's position, but over the years, she was always very, very helpful in a whole variety of things that pertain to human services and social justice, et cetera. And fortunately, last year, when we were looking at where do we go from here in the middle of the pandemic and thinking about breakthrough digital equity strategies, we went back to Gwen and asked what was her vision with the Universal Services Act. And she actually prepared an affidavit that we have that I think should be posted on the California Broadband Council website. I shared it with those who were doing the dedication, and I'm raising it again for all of you who are part of her staff that may not know that Gwen actually has a more timely recent statement about what her vision was regarding universal services, which makes very, very clear anything that we're talking about regarding the internet, although it went back when she was doing the pioneering work to technology that certainly I could never have imagined. I think it's important for the record, for the historical record, to have also posted what her vision was literally less than a year ago for the work that we're doing today. So I will make sure I resubmit that back to you, Richard, and make sure it gets on, that you can post it onto the California Broadband Council website. I think that will be a very fitting tribute, but an important historical record. So all of you who are part of Gwen Moore's team, just know how much you contributed to the trailblazing we continue to do today in the name of digital equity.
Thank you. We have about 6 minutes left. Do any of former Assemblymember Moore's staff want to say anything?
This is Carolyn Veal Hunter. I would speak briefly and just say I wasn't quite as young as Angela when I first came to work with Gwen Moore, but was still relatively young for the opportunities that she gave me, and that was over 3 decades ago. And you know, just the fact that I still work in this environment, and to hear her you know, bills that I know she's had some impact on continue to come before the legislature. And I mean, you know, we're talking about broadband today, but as Dr. Williams said, when I saw the chokehold bill that Mr. Gibson was doing, it just was another reminder of the places and the depths of her reach, and how that's, as he said, that's something she tried to do 40 years ago when there was a very unsettling situation that happened in the Southern California area with an athlete that was killed as a result of a chokehold. And it was just when I thought about the fact of how many people's lives could have been saved had that bill been put into place then. And when we take that back across to the broadband situation, had Gwen Moore's vision ever been all the way realized, we wouldn't be having some of the issues in you know, lack of the holes we see with respect to educating our youth and all of that stuff right now as we're going through this pandemic. And I just saw another one of our colleagues come on. I just saw Thurman White come on, and he was my predecessor. And again, I just appreciate the, you know, Bill and Bob and the ones who were there before me, and Joy, who was with Ms. Moore, working with her along till from day one to last day. I just appreciate the tutelage that they gave me, and that I'm still working in this environment today. So just want to thank you guys all for this wonderful dedication.
Let me just also just add to Carolyn, and certainly so good to see all of my former Gwen Moore colleagues on the call. But let me just thank the Broadband Council for recognizing Gwen, and certainly acknowledging all of her contributions. As someone who was on her staff, who actually worked on the Universal Lifeline bill at the time, and Utilities and Commerce, and it was a precedent-setting piece of legislation, but the work is still needs to be addressed. I was just reading a Washington Post article today talking about some of the problems with the federal Lifeline legislation, and that there is still issues around equal access and affordability to internet services throughout the country. And I suspect even in California, and certainly the pandemic has really brought to light these issues of equity, issues of affordability. We see it with telemedicine. We see it with online learning with our young people and parents. And so there is still so much work that needs to be done. So I would commend the council. The best thing I know Gwen Moore would say is continue to do the work, continue to do it with a racial and justice and affordability, a class lens, and just keep the faith and keep working to ensure a more just and equitable and sustainable California, and equitable access to all of the wealth of services that the internet provides. So again, thank you guys for recognizing Gwen, and please let any of us know how we can help the council in its work.
Thank you. We have a couple more minutes if anyone else would like to say anything.
Senator Stephen Bradford texted and said he's on the line. You don't see him, but he would love to say something if there's a moment.
Certainly, Senator Bradford.
Oh, you didn't hear us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I want to first thank the Broadband Council for recognizing Ms. Moore. As many of her former staffers and colleagues have stated, I probably would not be here today if it wasn't for Ms. Moore. She was the one who provided not only mentorship, but friendship over the last 35 years, and the great diversity, even still not where it should be, but the diversity that we see in this Capitol, the diversity that we see across the street in the third house is mainly because of Ms. Moore. When she chaired Utilities and Commerce, one of the things she clearly stated is, if you're going to come in and talk to me about broadband, phone service, lifeline, or any of those issues, those people who are coming in to talk to me, whether you work for the utility or a lobbying, needs to look like the community in which you serve. And we have to thank her for that because she was committed to that from the beginning to the end of making sure women and minorities are represented in this building as staffers, as legislators, and as lobbyists. And Junior Order 156 is probably her greatest legacy of making sure that you have women-owned, minority-owned businesses participating in this space. And when she authored that bill some 35 years ago, utilities were spending less than $500,000 with minority companies. Today, this year, we believe those numbers are going to exceed well over $12 billion with women-owned, minority-owned businesses. So that's all is attributed to Ms. Moore, her vision, her commitment. And again, I'm here today because of her. And when I chaired Utilities and Commerce, I constantly got calls from Ms. Moore saying, here's what you need to do. And I listened all the time, and here's where you need to be on this panel, and the en banc, and all those things that I participated in and continue to participate in is primarily because of Ms. Moore. So as we deal with the digital divide, let's all think about Ms. Moore and her legacy, and let's keep moving forward in that same vein.
Thank you, Senator. Those are great words. And thank you, everyone, for commenting. I just wanted to add that the California Lifeline program is our largest public purpose program in our division, and the communications division at the PUC. And a lot of Gwen Moore's ideas are enshrined in our Public Utility Code 709, which really is helping guide us in looking at how we can evolve Lifeline to cover more than just telephone service. So thank you, everybody. I'd like now to move over to the next agenda item, which is an update on the action plan from Stephanie Tom.
Sure, thank you, Rob. And thank you so much again to Ann and Dr. Williams, of course, for leading the dedication. It is an honor. You know, I have to say, Ann and I are chatting back and forth, and we're like, this is amazing. And it's just, again, as I said, it's so great to be working on broadband. We actually need more progress, but very proud, of course, to be able to deliver the Broadband for All action plan by the end of last calendar year, so we can make continued accelerated progress in 2021. So let's talk about what we've been doing over the last couple of months and where we're headed. And I'm actually just going to give a really high-level overview of what the team has been doing, because of course, we're positioning ourselves for execution of the action plan. As you know, of course, the Broadband for All action plan has about 24 actions. In those actions, what we've done is, of course, they're embedded underneath about 3 overarching goals. And what we want to do in 2021 is now we want to take a very hard look and see, okay, which of those, and we've reached out, by the way, to all of the agencies who will participate in the delivery and the execution of this action plan. And so we've reached out to them and said, okay, feasibly, right, we're taking a much more hands-on approach to the execution of this action plan to say, we want to partner with you. This is not an oversight and we're going to be tracking you. This is how together, given all the key parties that are necessary to deliver against this action plan, also thinking about the flexibility that might be needed as we move along the journey. What should we focus on first? What should be a priority? And how we looked at that priority is we broke it down from short term to long term. And this is something, by the way, that we have thought throughout the process of creating the action plan. As you can see in the action plan, when we were talking about short term, we definitely identified that short term would be about 0 to 2 years for completion, and that ideally all of the actions in the action plan will be initiated in this first calendar year. We are considering, of course, that everyone is incredibly busy. We want to account for, of course, everything else going on, but we do need to continue to make sure that broadband is a priority. And later on, of course, next up in the agenda, you'll hear a couple of agencies who've done an amazing job, Department of Aging, and as well as state parks, and of course, CDT prioritizing broadband and some of the progress that they've made. But stepping back, of course, to the execution of the plan, just to give you again an idea of the approach and where we're going next is we've taken all of the actions and broken them down to short-term and long-term. Short-term is 0 to 2 years, long-term is 3 to 5 years. So ideally, of course, all actions will be completed within 5 years, which is the term that the action plan envelops. With the feedback from all of the agencies, which we've gathered over the last few weeks at the beginning of this calendar year, we have about 11 actions that are short-term and 13 that are long-term. And then we further broke that down and said, okay, which do we feel we know we can complete? And we looked at a variety of dependencies and criteria to make sure that these were valid, that these were feasible. We do have, of course, very detailed spreadsheets, which I was not going to share on this council meeting, but will be available to all agencies. I do, of course, want to thank the team, Jules Stein and Sachin Brahme, who continue to support broadband. I'm very proud of the work that they're doing. And Jules will continue, of course, to run the broadband council meetings, to work with the council members where needed. And then Sachin, of course, with his expertise in project management skills, will continue to reach out to the agencies as we execute and to make sure that we're in sync as we deliver against the plan. I know that's a very high level right now, but that's what I wanted to share. As Richard mentioned, between Richard Rogers and Ellen and Adelina and Cami Dudley, and Cami, by the way, is excellent. She actually has been working very closely with my office since she represents CalNet and the telecom contracts. And we've been working very closely since the beginning of the calendar year when we were doing emergency response efforts to the pandemic and focused on broadband. So Cami, of course, has been working closely with me, understands the need for broadband, and of course, how we're already leveraging current contract vehicles to advance broadband. And so that will be the team moving forward. Any questions in general from the council or from, yes, sorry, just the council for right now. Okay. So I will be around, of course, for the next couple of days. We do have a full team to be supporting the transition if there are any questions, but trust me when I say we work very hard to make sure that things are already moving forward, that there's a clear path and a clear plan to make sure we deliver on this action plan, because if we delivered it in 4 months, we absolutely are going to execute it in record time. And then with that, I'll turn it back over to Rob, but I'm really excited to hear from, of course, like I said, presentations to hear about the progress that we've been making in these certain areas.
Thank you, Stephanie. Very good. We're going to next go on to the Rural Connectivity Invitation for Bid from the Department of Technology, and I'm not sure who will be presenting on that item.
Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick Dennis from the Department of Parks and Recreation. I'm going to be presenting this morning with Tiffany Angulo, the Assistant Deputy Director from Statewide Technology Procurement at CDT. So good morning, everyone. Lots of friendly faces. Pleased to be here this morning to talk to you all about this very exciting initiative that we partnered with CDT on this morning. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I'm going to be the guy with the PowerPoint presentation for today's meeting, so please bear with me.
Good morning, everyone. Well, Patrick's bringing that up. My name is Tiffany Angulo, although it doesn't state that on Zoom. I'm having some issues updating my name on that. So thank you, and thank you for having us today.
All right. Well, the item that we're going to go ahead and cover this morning is our statewide rural connectivity initiative, our invitation for bid. And I'm here this morning to talk about the partnership between CDT and the Department of Parks and Recreation to provide for this procurement opportunity for departments throughout the state. As part of our original conversations and partnerships with the Department of Technology, we thought it was relevant to bring and present this to this body this morning. We've had, as we share objectives to identify opportunities to promote broadband deployment to both unserved and underserved communities in areas of the state within the broadband that are aligned with the broadband executive order and broadband action plan that Stephanie was talking about. As part of this procurement collaboration, we took a multi-departmental approach to targeting both applicable IT and telecom solicitation categories and programs to deliver these services by also leveraging the state's buying power. Additionally, we want to provide for a vendor incentive to participate in the promotion of broadband itself. So let me talk about some of the challenges that departments like Department of Parks and Technology have in this space. Connectivity has been a challenge supporting our ongoing operational and administrative and public safety applications throughout the rural areas of the state, because our existing networks have had broadband limitations, and some of the existing networks are limited in their capacity to reach these rural areas of our state, limiting our ability to provide important services to our residents of the state of California in those locations and expand our operations. Additionally, in order to achieve connectivity in some of these locations, it's extremely expensive for state departments and agencies to deliver some of this connectivity in these areas. There's a major upfront capital expenditure often required to get connectivity to some of these areas. I can provide an example. One example that we have at Department of Parks and Recreation is we have many rural locations. One of those locations is Angel Island in the Bay Area, and we've been wanting to expand connectivity to Angel Island for a number of years. It's been on our technology deferred maintenance list for a number of years, and received quotes from the traditional terrestrial ISP companies to provide connectivity, and often those costs are in excess of the millions of dollars in upfront capital expense by the department to make that happen. So one of the things that we're trying to do with this contract is eliminate the upfront cost and the need for major construction activity. As many of you probably are aware, the Department of Parks and Recreation has many culturally and naturally sensitive lands in our parks system, and so attempting to avoid any major construction that would disrupt those culturally and naturally sensitive areas is a very high priority for us. So let me speak a little bit about the project background. So back in early 2020, last year, I approached the Department of Technology, and we initiated a discovery process looking at different options to the traditional terrestrial landline-based technologies in this space to deliver broadband to the remote areas of the state. The team used a criteria when looking at the types of services that we wanted to provide and the types of companies that were out there in this space to provide these types of services. Some of the criteria that we used in our market research included taking a look at opportunities to eliminate that upfront cost, right? To really make it more cost effective for state agencies to procure these services. We wanted a monthly managed service approach that included a help desk, 24-hour, 24/7 service, technology refresh and restoration of services, ongoing maintenance, and analytical tools that will help us to to better manage the program and the connectivity in these locations. And some of the benefits of that is really that model meets, operational budget goals, like I stated, and helps us stay under our delegated spending authority because it's a monthly managed service as opposed to large one-time capital expenditures related with those terrestrial digs. We're looking at fixed wireless technology. So again, less disruptive than installing terrestrial landline services. I touched on that earlier. Lots of sensitive cultural and natural resources within the park system. It's our job to steward those and protect those and keep those around for generations to come. We're really looking for broadband level connectivity that would allow us to expand our departmental operations and services that we provide to the residents of the state. And so that was really important. And here's some examples, just quickly, I'll get into the members of the work group later and the state agencies that participated, but really, it provides the ability for, additional public safety initiatives, virtual command centers for for CAL FIRE which has been a real important thing here recently with our recent wildfire seasons that have been very pervasive and aggressive. And so, we're looking to provide those services with that level of connectivity into these rural locations that has been a challenge for some state departments and agencies in the past. Additionally, looking at an opportunity for quick installation times. One of the things that we did when we talked to different companies in this space was, looking at their ability to deliver service quickly and bring connectivity online in a rapid fashion. So let me talk about the collaboration. So once we had engaged with Department of Technology and received their sponsorship, we were able to move really quickly. Some of the conversations that I had with my colleagues and department CIOs throughout the state, there was a large demand. There ended up being a really large demand for these types of services. In fact, we received assistance through Department of Technology's CalNet program and statewide technology procurement that provided a survey out to the CIO, AIO throughout the state. And based on that survey and the data that we got back and the responses really showing the level of demand was there, we received a green light from Department of Technology to move further into pursuing this contract. And so we assembled a work group of interested state entities, those people who had responded and others who had responded subsequently, and scheduled a series of stakeholder meetings to make sure that we were meeting the needs of everybody with this contract, and that we weren't just focused on parks needs, but really how can this be used by the department to gain benefit of the state's purchasing power. So here's a list of some of the departments that participated on that work group. And you can see by the representation there, it's a vast swath of business programs. So just to speak a little bit about the Ifp development process, again, State Parks was lucky enough to be the sponsor agency. I was the sponsor executive for the project. We led the discovery and the market research, as I stated, worked with CDT to draft the IFB and incorporated functional requirements, business and technical requirements from the discovery that we had performed. We managed the business and technical requirement reviews. We met with the stakeholder group over several months. Several meetings were held to discuss and refine the goals, the expectations of the IFB. We went through an explanation of the procurement process, the fact that we're looking at a statewide methodology, shared use cases, and really use those use case discussions to refine both the functional and technical requirements that are represented in the IFB today. And so let's talk about outcomes. So the outcome is really to expand broadband connectivity into rural areas to provide additional services to the public, right? I can touch on that a little bit. There's a few examples here. This is really the low-hanging fruit. Expand access to public safety services, as I touched on. CAL FIRE has 6 different primary staging locations for fighting and addressing wildfires in different regions of the state. They're very interested in high-speed connectivity to those command centers during incident response. That's been a challenge for them in the past. And so it will expand access to public safety services, not just through that department, but through the Department of Parks and Recreation, through our law enforcement group and our rangers, and also other public safety entities, including Department of the Office of Emergency Services that was a member of our work group. So we were looking to, from a parks perspective, expand point of sale functions into rural state park locations. Again, allow for our scientists to collect data on important species that, protected species, both plant and animal species in the field. And again, this is just a short list, but there was a myriad of opportunities that we're really excited about for many of the departments that were part of the work group. And so I'm going to kick it over to Tiffany to go ahead and cover the IFB highlights.
Thank you, Patrick. So yes, the IFB is an active procurement. CDT's role, as Patrick mentioned, is to partner and support parks to make sure this is a successful contract and that this is a statewide contract as well. As you can see, that this bid will be conducted under what we call Public Contract Code 6611, which allows us to negotiate. As we discussed earlier, this is to achieve a value effective statewide contract and also engage a high level of engagement for vendors to participate. You can see that there is an 8-year base term with 2 one-year options. And that is because we wanted to make sure that there was a return on investment for the vendor community. Since there is 0 upfront cost and installation, equipment maintenance will all be provided. We wanted to allow the vendors to have a long runway to achieve that return on investment. The key action dates currently show a 5-month turnaround schedule, and the evaluation will be comprised of several components to ensure that the most responsive and responsible providers are provided an award. As we stated earlier, the end goal is to procure a fully managed statewide fixed wireless broadband connectivity service with a multiple vendor award is basically our objective. And again,
right. And so,
yep.
I'm sorry, really quick before we move on, I just wanted to interject really quickly. I want to thank CDT for their partnership. I want to particularly thank Stephanie, Tom, for her support and leadership in this area. Without your support, this really wouldn't have been able to get off the ground. I appreciate it greatly, and so do all the members of the work group and departments that were part of the work group. So thank you, and best of luck to you in your future endeavors and opportunities. I thank you very much. And then to Tiffany Angulo for her leadership and guidance along the way, keeping me out of trouble and keeping us on path. The time frame that we were able to achieve this was incredible, and then this really speaks to the partnership and the opportunity, I think, to maybe address this approach more in the future. I think it was incredible, and all the members of the work group and the different department representatives that we had are super pleased and very anxious and excited to take advantage of this opportunity. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Patrick. I also echo the tremendous support that Stephanie has provided and CDT to help us move this along as well. And she's been an extreme champion. I wish you the best of luck. I know you're awesome, and you're going to be awesome wherever you go. And also to you, Patrick, for being a great partner in this and making sure that we think of the bigger picture. And sometimes those small details about the timeframes and kind of my everyday business. So thank you again for the for all the kind words on that. And it is an extremely big success, I think, with the 5-month turnaround time. So, and again, that's all contributed to your partnership and being so responsive to us. I did want to just follow up with the last reminder that please direct any questions to our CDT procurement. Raman Pabla is the senior procurement officer over this. This is an active procurement, so please, again, any questions related to this, please direct them to Raman at CDT. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis and Tiffany. This is very exciting. We have about 10 minutes left. I was just going to start off with a couple questions / comments and then open it up to other council members. And I realize you're fairly far along in this process. So to the extent this even is applicable is sort of up to you. But I think when you're talking about 25.3 as a standard, that will prove to be pretty ineffective if you're looking at supporting not just point of sale, but also things such as scientific data and emergency services and that sort of thing. I think that with fixed wireless, a lot of times you're limited by line of sight. If you are able to get a line of sight connection with that fixed wireless radio, why not go for a bigger capacity, something like 300 to 500 megabits per second for your last mile connection to the park office or to whatever end user you're going to be using. The other thing is, this is a great opportunity to think about the bigger picture with regard to the middle mile piece. So while your last mile need may only be, to support point of sale or some of the other end user activities, given that you're going into rural parts of the state, it'd be great to leverage some of the middle mile that isn't supporting the last mile, but that is supporting the last mile to serve other potential end users, either community or nonprofits or businesses that are out there as well. So those are just two things that came to mind while I was listening to your very thorough and helpful presentation. So with that, I'm going to open it up to other council members.
Mr. Chairman, this is Sunny McPeak. I also want to thank Dennis and Tiffany and building on your comments. I'm trying, I actually think this is very, very interesting, very exciting. So 2 questions. One, is it through the procurement process when we go to Mr. Pabla, would we find a map of all of the connections that are essentially being procured? And if so, is the funding stream a consolidation of the budgets you currently have? Is that how this is going to be paid for? I guess I had 3 questions, and then the third is it envisioned that other networks can connect into this network, particularly on the middle mile for last mile deployment to unserved or underserved communities?
Right. Tiffany, do you want to take the procurement related question, and then I can address some of the other business requirements or functional?
Yes, thanks. And I do anticipate that this would be a very limited response because we do have an active procurement. But I do want to mention that this is a $0 engagement up front. So the budget, Sunny, is not necessarily needed for this model. And that's really a really big success from Patrick's team and the collaboration they've done with the departments to ensure that there's a 0 upfront cost and that it's really the vendor is responsible to make the revenue within that 8 or 10 year period.
Right. This is I can just add on to that. I may be muted. Hang on one second.
You're not muted.
Okay, I'm not muted. Okay, great. I can just add on to that really quickly and address some of the additional questions. As far as the required connectivity speed question that was brought up, that was a minimum requirement for the use of the IFB. So a minimum speed, but there's always an opportunity, obviously, for bidders to come back with a faster speed that will benefit them and obviously cause them to receive more opportunities for business. So that was a minimum for the purposes of the procurement. As far as an opportunity for the unserved or underserved, I wanted to just touch on the fact that we have added an incentive in the IFB for the respondents to provide a description of how they might provide services to the public out in these rural areas as part of their response. So we'll gain benefit from the bidders describing how they might further their relationship out in these rural areas to the residents that may be in that area and be unserved. So we'll have some insight into that. And so we're excited about that proposition as well.
Great, thank you. Any other council members wish to comment or have questions?
This is Laura Sasaki from the California State Library. I wanted to ask a question as to whether or not the upfront costs that will not exist will be amortized over the life of that 8-year initial term. And also wanted to echo what Rob said and Sunny about the minimum speeds. Latency is definitely an issue. And one of the things that we have seen at the State Library while going through a very similar process of trying to get specifically rural and remote locations connected, working in cooperation with the Department of Education as well, specifically with the fixed wireless, has been that when we get quotes back, a lot of times when we specify a minimum speed, what we're seeing is that we get the quote for the minimum speed, and then at any time in the future when we want to upgrade, the upgrade costs are extremely can be cost prohibitive actually. If we want to go from 50 meg to 100 to 100, 500 and on up to a gig and beyond. So I just wanted to make sure that was something that was a consideration, that upgrade costs would be maybe built in because that's something that we have definitely seen in the last couple of years that I've been working on this project that could be a barrier. So I just wanted to make those comments. And thank you for this, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for your questions. I can touch on a few different things. Yeah, the costs will be amortized out over the length of the contract. That's what allows the bidders to recognize the return on investment. I hear what you're saying about the latency and about the speed. I think I'm getting that from just about everybody here. It's really worth taking a look at for sure. I look to benefit from your guys' experience in this space. There are additional technical requirements in the IFB that address latency requirements and additional performance requirements. So, we're hopeful that based on the collaboration that we had with all the members of the work group, that we're in a safe place, but we'll definitely take a look at what we have just to make sure that we're using the feedback from this group in a proactive way.
Great, thank you. At the State Library, I would love to be a resource if you would like to tap into the experience that we've had.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, we have about 3 more minutes. Are there any other questions or comments from council members? All right. Well, thank you very much, Patrick and Tiffany, for your presentation. Excellent.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, next we will hear from the Department of Aging. They will provide a report or an update. I'm not sure who from Department of Aging will be presenting.
Oh, hi. This is Mark Beckley. I'm the Chief Deputy Director with the California Department of Aging. Thank you so much for having me here today to present on CDA's digital divide initiatives. Before I get started, I'd just like to provide a brief overview of the responsibilities and activities of the Department of Aging. So the Department of Aging provides nutrition services, both congregate and home delivered meals, information assistance, legal services, and elder rights assistance to California's 8.8 million older adults who are 60 and over. So we're a relatively small department with a very large mission, and happy to say that we just recently launched our master plan for aging, which includes quite a few digital divide components. Okay, so under the governor's broadband executive order, the California Department of Aging was specifically called out to partner with CDT and CPUC to analyze the needs of older adults 60 plus to help them access affordable, reliable, high-speed internet and to form partnerships. And so we have definitely started on our way. We're currently conducting a needs assessment and doing a lot of document literature review in terms of the gaps that older adults have in terms of accessing the internet and broadband connectivity. I'd like to start with an overview of data that's recently been published that gives an overview of the need of older adults, especially when it comes to connecting with the internet. So a study that was recently conducted by the Humana Foundation in partnership with the Older Adults Technology Services, OATS, which is an ARP affiliate, released a report just last month that found nationally nearly 22 million older adults still lack wireline broadband access at home, which represents 42% of the nation's population of 65 and older adults. And I included a link to the report in this PowerPoint. Some of the other key findings of the report were that Medicaid enrollees are 2.7 times more likely to be offline. Older adults with less than a high school diploma or incomes below 25,000 are 10 times more likely to be offline. And lack of internet access is also an equity issue. So those with functional impairments are twice as likely to be offline. And Black and Latino seniors are 2.5 and 3.3 times respectively to be offline. So clearly there's some fundamental gaps in terms of individuals' age and ethnicity when it comes to accessing the internet. This is data that was taken from a Berkeley IGS study that was conducted on behalf of the California Emerging Technology Fund. Such a great study and such a great report and just so rich with data. Again, this kind of highlights some of the trends that I was speaking to in the last slide, that, there's great ethnic disparities as well as age disparities. So what this shows is that Latino households, so Spanish-speaking dominant households, are more likely, 43% lack internet access or underconnected. And then for African-American populations, their lack of access is almost 19%. And then when you look at older adults, the population 65 to 74 age range is 29% either unconnected or underconnected. And for the 75 plus population, that goes up to about 38% unconnected. So yeah, truly, significant gaps when it comes to older adults being online. Again, this was taken from the same study and very, very good information about why people are not connected. So the number one reason is it's too expensive or no computer or smartphone at home. And then, there are some people who can connect from other places. What we have learned just anecdotally through our local area agency on aging network is the first reason is absolutely true for older adults. Low-income seniors have difficulty either purchasing devices or purchasing service plans to be able to afford to go online. And the other key reason that we're coming up against is digital literacy and lack of training. So older adults who really don't have somebody who can spend the time with them to train them on how to use a tablet or a smartphone or those types of devices. Okay, so what impact does this have on older adults? What's the real world impact of lacking um, internet connectivity and broadband access? So something that we're really looking at, especially in light of the COVID pandemic, where we were asked to stay at home and to isolate to prevent the spread of the COVID virus, is that this really does pronounce social isolation and loneliness among older adults. What this graph shows is that older adults are more likely to live alone and as a result experience loneliness and isolation. We also know that health is also a key concern during the COVID pandemic. Several Californians have been afraid, and some are still afraid to go to a hospital to receive services because out of fear of acquiring the virus in a hospital setting. That makes services such as telehealth all that much more important. We want people to be able to quickly access a doctor or a nurse and get medical information or a quick medical diagnosis without having to necessarily physically go into a hospital where they could be exposed. But it's not only the COVID pandemic, but we also know that older adults sometimes have mobility issues, have trouble physically going to a hospital. So getting a quick check on your phone or tablet or consultation with a doctor or nurse can be hugely beneficial. Okay, so the first initiative, so CDA has two initiatives that it actively has in progress, and these are really intended to get at both of those issues, social isolation among seniors, as well as access to telehealth. So we were very fortunate to receive a generous donation from Google of 8,500 smart speaker devices. We received these devices during the end of December, and we've distributed these devices to our local area agencies on aging, as well as our multi-purpose senior services sites. Those sites provide in-home healthcare for older adults. We've specifically targeted low-income older adults who, could not afford these devices on their own. These devices we expect will help with, easily making phone calls, putting on calendaring, reminders, listening to music, as well as accessing information via the smart speakers. And we are building in an evaluation component. So we are measuring the success of these devices to reduce feelings of loneliness and isolation among older adults, as well as just providing assistance with daily tasks. One thing I'll mention with these devices is it does require somebody to already be connected to the internet. You have to have internet access to set up these devices. So it really doesn't help with connectivity, but it does provide some assistance in digital form. The second project that we've undertaken is to leverage our CARES Act funding to purchase 4,000 iPads for older adults. These iPads come with 2-year data plans, as well as dedicated AT&T training and technical support specifically for older adults. So this was a really big selling point from AT&T, and we're really glad that they had this. We didn't want, an older adult to have to call just a general customer service line. So this training team actually worked on a hospice project in Florida. So they're really trained to deal specifically with older adults. And our target population for these devices are low-income older adults who currently don't have a device, don't have access to the internet, who live alone. And the goal is really to help curb feelings of loneliness and isolation. We're partnering with the USC Graduate School of Gerontology to measure the extent to which the devices are effective in reducing feelings of isolation. So every quarter, we're going to be doing survey assessments and kind of measuring the effectiveness of the devices. We're also going to do a separate measure of the access to telehealth services by participants with the devices. And we have a partnership contemplated with a foundation that may help with training and digital literacy around using the devices for telehealth. Okay, I think another thing that I wanted to highlight in my presentation is how the nature of the work of our providers has really changed during the COVID pandemic. So pre-pandemic, some of our service providers, such as our adult day health centers that provide community health care and social activities, as well as our MSSP providers that provide in-home health, were required to do their functions in person. So congregate programs or in-home programs, face-to-face interaction. With the COVID pandemic, the Federal Administration for Community Living and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid had provided waivers to allow these services to be provided virtually. So again, this expands telehealth more, the ability of our providers to provide health services via telehealth, as well as providing social and engagement activities virtually as well. We've found this to be very successful and a great innovation in service delivery, especially for those older adults who may be homebound, don't have the ability to really easily get out of their houses to still engage in the services that our providers use. And shortly after the pandemic broke, we did a lot of work with our providers to do information and training for their participants to learn how to use devices, how to get online, how to acquire devices. And we posted all of this information on a webpage that we set up, our Digital Divide webpage, that provides information, technical assistance, tutorial, training videos about how to access and use online services. And so this really kind of recaps what I said. What we are really encouraging the federal government to do is to make these waiver services, these virtual waivers, permanent. We really think that the better way to serve older adults going forward is through a hybrid of virtual services as well as in-person services. We're working through those conversations with CMS and ACL right now, but we are hopeful that this is a new way of doing business that the feds will allow us to do. Okay, then I just wanted to highlight some other partnerships we have to bridge the digital divide. As I mentioned, we are partnering with a foundation on a digital education and literacy project. We're still kind of scoping out the extent of that project. There's been a lot of discussion about educating participants on telehealth services, but also just basic training and education on use of devices, since, as I mentioned, that's a key barrier to older adults adopting digital technology. We're also continuing to seek additional philanthropic opportunities for device donations. We were very fortunate that Google came through to us and provided the home speakers. We have been in conversations with at least one other company that may be interested in making a donation, but we're going to continue to engage with companies and foundations and philanthropy to see if we can get additional device donations. We're also, I say exploring, it's really more publicizing the low-cost data plans that exist and subsidies for low-income individuals to acquire data plans. And then we're also exploring other technologies. So what can we do to expand the services and equipment that we provide to our program participants, such as electronic pets, fall detection devices, and partnering with local access TV stations to provide more age-friendly content. So those efforts continue. I will say that I think that we've been very fortunate with the CARES Act funding that we were able to purchase the iPads. We definitely found them to be, fairly expensive. I mean, it definitely is a significant investment to purchase the devices themselves as well as the data plans. And, we're hopeful that through evaluation and study of the devices and showing their effectiveness and promoting telehealth, maybe reducing other state costs, as well as mitigating loneliness and isolation, which again can have adverse health effects, that maybe that will, spur further investments either at the state or federal levels in digital technology for older adults. And that's my presentation. As with our prior speakers, I did want to really thank Stephanie Tom again. She has been phenomenal, a true leader. as a prior speaker said, we could not have gotten these 2 projects off the ground without her assistance. Sashim Brahmi as well, who's been just such a fantastic partner. Adelina Zendejas and Jules Stein. Just such a great team at CDT, and we really couldn't have asked for better partners. Sorry to see Stephanie go, but you know, it sounds like she's got great opportunities ahead of her. So I just want to really thank and appreciate all the great work that they've done with us.
Thank you very much, Mark. This is an excellent presentation. I'm very encouraged by all the work you're doing. Just a few comments from me, and then I'll open it up to other council members. You know, the number of unconnected aging adults is quite large from what I understand. This came up even yesterday in congressional testimony, the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. The CDC published, I think, a study about the importance of internet connectivity to the well-being of aging adults. And that's not only from an emotional standpoint, but also from a telehealth. And, you know, now with vaccine signups, you have to go to the internet to sign up for that. You know, my own mother she extols the virtues of the iPad. She's on the iPad almost all day on Zoom classes and learning all sorts of stuff, as well as signing up for vaccine, you know, and all that stuff. So it's absolutely critical, especially right now. So thank you very much. I'm going to open it up to other council members if anyone would like to comment or has questions.
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And thank you, Mark, for an excellent presentation. Just a couple of comments and then a couple of questions. First, as you cited, the study that IGS did that we've sponsored, it's been really interesting over the last 13 years that we've sponsored the statewide survey on adoption, how that percentage of those who don't want to be online has gone down. And as you represented the data, it's less than 1%. And those folks who generally are over 75 years of age, when they're informed that's the way they can stay in their home, also actually say, then I want it too. But literally, it is almost negligible those who say they do not want to be online at home. So no, that was, I think, very important to say. Second, that I wanted to share with the council is when CETF with Partners in Care and the Primary Care Association and Scenic did over 8 hours of fact-finding listening sessions on telehealth, there was an amazing sort of coalescence and coincidence of similar views from every segment of the healthcare industry about the need to pay attention to those who are elderly in skilled nursing facilities, in assisted living centers, and that there was a preponderance of elderly people who are doing their telehealth visits with doctors by telephone, as opposed to a device that might be able to do more sophisticated things. So a tablet or the device that goes with the healthcare is becoming, I think, more and more recognized. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. But the questions, I two questions. One is at USC, is it Donna Benton that is working with you in gerontology?
Yeah, it's actually Kate Wilbur and her team.
Okay.
That we're partnered with, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then go ahead.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we connect them because it's USC who's doing that survey now this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to make sure we've got the right researchers connected. And then the second is the caregiver centers. Are you working with that network of the caregiver centers throughout the state on outreaching to older Californians?
Yeah, that is definitely part of our plan. We initially did some estimates in terms of our, outreach sort of scope with the caregiver centers. So we did survey the centers and kind of understand, what the broadband needs are or digital device needs are with those centers. But yeah, we plan to continue to work with them.
Great, thank you. Any other council members wish to comment or have questions?
And I just want to make a comment in response to something that Sunny said. Yeah, you know, it's something that the department clearly acknowledges, that I think the majority of older adults would love to get online if they had, you know, access to devices or, you know, plans that they could afford. But we do know that there's always going to be that percentage of population that simply do not want to get online. And it's not only older adults. I mean, there's segments of our, you know, population in general that just kind of do not embrace technology. So we're always looking for alternatives to still deliver our services. We'll always have an in-person function for those folks who don't want to use telehealth. You know, the COVID pandemic's been interesting because with the distribution of the vaccine, digital literacy really comes up. You know, a lot of these local health websites would ask somebody to go online to complete an application to make an appointment. Some people don't know how to get online, or they don't have an email address, or you know, they don't know how to upload documents, where in some cases that was necessary. So, you know, having a phone service available was definitely a great option, and I'm glad that the state started promoting that more. But yeah, we have to acknowledge that there's some people who aren't going to ever want to get online, but we still have to provide mechanisms for them to access services.
Mark, what are your thoughts about Medicare providing a benefit for broadband for a subscription?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think that's something, yeah, we would definitely support.
Okay, any other council members?
If I could just comment, Rob, on your question, it looks as if there could be a real justification of the cost effectiveness of that in a number of ways. The testimony we received as an example from community health centers, in particular, the federally qualified health centers, said they went from about a 30% no-show for behavioral services, mental health visits, to everybody showing up, you know, 0 no-shows, which is really very interesting in terms of the healthcare. The technology that can be provided in skilled nursing facilities and or assisted living to offset transports to hospital and hospitalizations could be, it's the kind of thing that the Congressional Budget Office would recognize in a budget scoring. So we're trying to get that data, by the way, Mark, and we're going to pull you into a pilot we're doing with SNFs to help us on the design, also that evaluation. So look out for that email.
Okay, fantastic, thank you.
And then, you know, the whole notion around the isolation, offsetting that can also be helpful. But it is, all of the healthcare providers are expecting, while there will be a return to a mixture of online or by technology, telephone, as well as internet, for healthcare visits, as well as in person, that there is so much of a savings to the system itself with that mix if we optimize the technology. So that goes to your point about a service, the internet subscription, to keep people connected.
Absolutely.
Okay, if we don't have any other comments or questions from council members, we will move over to public comment. So I'd like to remind everyone that the public comment should be limited to topics discussed during this meeting and should not exceed 2 minutes. And if you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand feature, and Jules Stein will be calling on speakers in the order the hands are raised.
I'm not seeing any raised hands. If somebody's unable to raise their hand, you're welcome to put your name in the chat feature. This is a first for one of these meetings.
All right. Now's the chance if you did want to comment.
And a reminder that anybody is always welcome to send something to the California Broadband Council email account, and you can link to it on the Broadband Council website, and you can submit public written comment anytime you're interested in doing so.
And Jules, it looks like we did have a question about the PowerPoint presentations. Will they be available after the meeting is concluded?
They will be available when the actual video is posted, and the reason that they'll be embedded in the video is because it would take quite a while to transcribe them so they're ADA compliant. That being, if you want to go ahead and email that Broadband Council email account, cabroadbandcouncil@ca.gov, we're happy to email you the copies of those presentations to expedite things.
Okay, it looks like we have one person, Jules. Kevin Hostert.
Hi, just wanted to jump in real quick regarding the concern about cultural and environmental resources for the state parks. There's lots of tools that we can use, and that I'm an environmental consultant, to mitigate those impacts of cultural and biological resources in there. So, you know, a good environmental consultant or team can kind of work around those. So I just wanted to say there's lots of tools that, you know, a construction project or a plan can use to kind of minimize impacts to those resources. That's all.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else?
Can I jump in this thing without raising my hand?
Certainly.
Okay, I'm Greg Cook. I work with a number of rural communities. So I have a couple of questions. One, the $7 billion that Congress is allocating, how much of that will go to California in your estimation?
I can start answering that question. We don't know right now.
Okay.
So the FCC is putting out, or expected to put out, rules next Thursday for the 3.2 billion of that, the emergency broadband benefit, but that's 3.2 billion for the entire United States. And then the 1 billion for tribal is also for the entire United States.
Second question, I work with a number of rural communities who have broadband backbone facilities within their communities. And they would be very interested in supporting the distribution of that broadband facility to communities, underserved communities in primarily rural areas. I didn't hear from the presentation today any direct relationship to those underserved areas today. Is there a plan? I guess the PUC is going to oversee all of this stuff. Is there a plan to try to encourage that service to those underserved areas today?
So just to clarify, that the PUC is not involved in this procurement. This is with Department of Technology, right, Parks and Recreation. And it sounded like from what Patrick said, that they are considering, or they're encouraging bidders to include, you know, how they would serve the communities surrounding those areas that they're planning to bring service to.
I thank you. I recall that. For some reason, I'm remembering at the beginning of the presentation, you indicated the PUC was going to be holding a roundtable on March 2nd.
That's correct.
And are those issues going to be discussed at that time as well?
So the roundtable on March 2nd, we're actually having 3 roundtables, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th for tribal. And this is for the 1 billion of that 7 billion that's intended for tribes for broadband.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Rob, could I just comment on Mr. Cook's question regarding the 3.2 billion that is the emergency broadband benefit that is being, at this point, the subject of the Federal Communications Commission working out rules. That benefit is actually going to go through the internet service providers. They're going to claim it down. It, as I understand it. And so they're right in the middle of rulemaking. We always look at California's fair share being, well, we're 13% of the nation's population and we're 15% of all the poor members or residents of the nation. So I'm looking for our ISPs to go after 480 million a benefit for our residents in California. And that's what we have been hoping to hear from both the FCC and the internet service providers, a plan to get the fair share of those dollars for our California residents.
This is Sarah. I'll jump in just for a second regarding Greg's question. Greg, I think you're asking, I'm just trying to paraphrase, that you're aware of some local government entities or communities in these rural areas that already have a fiber backbone, and they're looking for a way to partner with somebody, either, maybe there's a program at the PUC that can help, or some other arrangement where they can try to figure out how to leverage this fiber backbone to bring broadband to some of these harder to reach disadvantaged parts of their local government communities. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I'm looking for money.
So yeah, I think maybe you and the PUC can get together and talk about, what resources there are and are, potentially coming up for funding opportunities. I know that obviously the California Advanced Services Fund is the primary broadband infrastructure funding entity in California. And there may be, insofar as there's infrastructure money at the feds coming, I would alert you to the fact that there was the Rural Digital Opportunities Fund reverse auction. It's unclear if the bids that have gone forward with RDOF are going to continue under the new administration. Most of the bids were made for infrastructure that was fixed wireless, some satellite, not the kind of infrastructure that we really want to see built out to get the kind of capacity that we need in some of these areas. So it's my understanding is unclear right now whether the new leadership at the FCC is going to move forward with that. So there might be another opportunity for federal funds, and Rob can correct me if any of that's incorrect, because I think the PUC has been watching this a little bit more closely.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and I'm going to rely on Sunny's goal to get that money for California.
So I was just going to add in the situation, Greg, that you're describing. We've seen this situation quite often, and it often comes down to the owner of that fiber and if there's capacity available and if they're willing to lease space on it. If the fiber is something that we funded through CSF is one thing, but if the fiber is already there, then we have to really look at who the fiber owner is and what the terms are for getting onto that fiber. But we have seen this issue before, and it certainly, from a logical standpoint, you ask the question, why can't we just tap into that fiber? But that's something we're trying to work through.
Well, thank you for that. We find that current funds and programs, the providers aren't really interested in serving low-income, remote rural areas because they're awfully expensive to construct. But that doesn't mean those folks shouldn't get service. So we're looking for any way that we can get revenue support to support that fund, the development of those rural customers who are never going to be a customer of a major carrier because there's no money in it for the major carrier. And that's the bottom line.
Definitely, yes. And so Sarah mentioned the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. That's an FCC program that's intended to bring broadband to what they call high cost areas that are usually low population density, harder to serve. The California Advanced Services Fund is a state program that we administer that also looks to bring broadband to unserved areas. But even both of those, there are areas where providers don't want to go, as you say, because the return on investment isn't sufficient to justify the build. So I think what we're looking at now, actually, we do have a proceeding open now that's looking at bringing broadband. How do we solve that problem, basically? So feel free to contact me and I can put you in touch with the folks who are working on that. And if you'd be interested in becoming a party, you could comment on that proceeding as well.
Thank you very much. I'll take advantage of that.
Greg, which county are you in?
Right now I'm in Sacramento County, but I'm talking about a bunch of rural counties.
Right, right. And
Plumas County, all over Shasta County.
Yeah, on the Northeast. Okay, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, yeah. Folks live out there and they can't get service. And I'll tell you, during this school situation, it's been terrible trying to get these kids an opportunity to get in the classroom.
Hi, this is Danielle Hughes with the Tahoe Transportation District. I'd like to chime in a little bit on Greg's comment because I'm trying to deal with some of the same things that he's talking about up in the Lake Tahoe region. I'm working right now with the UNR and University of Nevada, Reno, and the state of Nevada's broadband technology lead to bring in the IO2 network through from the schools there into both South Lake Tahoe and Kings Beach, which are both low-income communities. I did try to work. There's a large project happening on the North Shore where they're opening up 11 miles of ground that we could really put in fiber there. That I struggled, quite frankly, to get funding to support that. I think there's a little bit of a difference in how it's being handled in Nevada, where NDOT is regularly putting in fiber. They're putting forward fiber in a project that will be bringing it to Kings Beach this summer and next summer. They're kind of working collaboratively with the education network and the transportation network to bring it in. We'd like to do the same in the California side, but I'm in the same boat, struggling with getting funding to bring forward a solution and really trying to look at those dig once policies strategically, because construction costs are extremely high in Lake Tahoe because of the granite bedrock, our shortened construction seasons. It's been a challenge for us here. We are having significant demand with the COVID. We've had an increased drive-up market because it's one of the few places that Californians can come and travel to that they don't have to get on a plane. So we've had significant visitation. For us, it's not a population issue, it's a visitation issue, and it crashes our system. Really need some support from the California side to help facilitate that build out.
Thank you, Danielle. Another opportunity I can connect with you offline. We do have consortia that are really set up to help communities bring fiber to their communities or bring connectivity, period. So if you'd like to contact me after the meeting, I can put you in touch with those people.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Rob.
All right, last call. Any other questions or I'm sorry, comments? Okay, well, I would like to thank everybody for attending today's meeting. I'd like to thank the presenters, and I want to thank Stephanie Tom for her amazing service on the council and to the Department of Technology, and best luck to her on her new move into other parts, hopefully still broadband related in some ways, as Sunny said. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to seeing you again at the next council meeting. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.